Today we're going to be taking a look at the PC performance for Prey, which is a reboot of the game that came out in, I believe, 2006, and it is from Bethesda, who's the publisher, and the developer is Arcane Studios, who, if you remember, they've worked on the Dishonored games, and I was really hesitant going into this game. I really wasn't sure how good it was going to be. A lot of the press was saying, you know, should you be worried about Prey, because Bethesda didn't send out review copies until like the day before the game was coming out today on May 5th. I ended up picking up the game over on CD Keys for, I believe, $37. I will link to them down in the description below if you are thinking about picking this game up. I watched my buddy Carrick over at ACG. He did a full review on this game, and he rates games on a buy, wait for sale, or rent rating, and he said this game is an absolute buy. And so far, I have to agree with him, as it really reminds me a lot of games like Half-Life or the original Prey, where you can walk around, you can pick up and interact with pretty much any object in the game, throw it, move it, what have you. There's a lot of that element, so if you are a fan of those types of old-school first-person games that are really atmospheric, then I think Prey is going to hit that sweet spot for you guys, and I'm definitely going to be completing this game. Can't wait to delve into it a little bit further, but today we're going to be focusing just on the performance for you, so you can have, if you have any concerns about how it may run on your system, then we can put those to rest. And spoiler alert, the game is running fantastic on all three cards that I threw at it, the 1080 Ti, RX 480, and the GTX 1060. I was benchmarking off of my i7 6800K build along with 32 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, and the 6800K was clocked at 4.3 gigahertz. For our graphics cards, I was running on the latest drivers for both NVIDIA and AMD. So for NVIDIA, that's 382.05, and for AMD, that's 17.5.1. Both of those drivers respectively came out just yesterday in order to be optimized for this game, so I feel both sides have an equal chance here going into Prey. And there was a splash screen at the start of the game, actually, saying that this is an AMD Ryzen optimized title and all of that. But as we'll see in the results here, the game actually ended up running better on NVIDIA GPUs. So let's start things off in the options menu so we can get a quick overview in there of the settings that we have available to us. You can see right now I'm playing at 1440p, but I did test also at 1080 and 1440 on the lower end GPUs, and on the 1080 Ti, I tested at 1440 and 4K. We do have options for full screen windowed and borderless windowed mode, and you can set VSync on or off, although it did do a hard lock to my monitor's max refresh rate of 144 Hz until I went into the config file and raise that number up, as well as adjusting the FOV in the config file, because unfortunately there's no FOV slider here in the options menu. Hopefully they might look at adding that in the future. By default, it was set at 85 in the config, but which is really not too bad, but I like to have it up at 90, and it was noticeable for me just bumping it up that extra 5 degrees. If you guys want to see how to do that, I'll leave a link down in the description below that explains how to adjust the FOV of the game. We can see right now I am running on custom options, but there are basic presets: low, medium, high, very high, and right here in the advanced settings we can see object detail. I've got everything up at max. We've got very high on that, shadow quality, texture quality, anisotropic filtering, anti-aliasing, which has SMAA 2TX, 1TX, as well as SMAA 1x and FXAA, or you can turn anti-aliasing off. But for all of my testing, this is the settings that I was using, with everything cranked up as high as it could go. And then we've got screen space directional occlusion and screen space reflections, which can set either to full resolution, half resolution, or off. I was testing at full resolution though on all of those options. But getting into the performance now, we will start off with the mid-range battle with the RX 480 versus the GTX 1060. And on the RX 480 here at 1080p, we can see we got an average of 110 FPS and a minimum of 81. And on the GTX 1060, we got an average of 131 and a minimum of 96. So both of these cards certainly able to run this game at 1080p, maxed out, without breaking a sweat. But it's undeniable that this game was running better on the GTX 1060. That's a huge disparity there in the performance, 131 to 110. That's a 21 FPS difference in the averages, and it was significantly higher in the minimums, winning by 15 FPS there on the minimum. So for some reason, this game is running much better on NVIDIA GPUs right now, even though this is an AMD kind of sponsored title. I know they're bundling it in with like upcoming Vega GPUs, I believe, or something. So I really expected this game to run better on AMD cards, but it is running much better on the 1060 than the RX 480. And I had both of those cards actually overclocked. The RX 480 was pushed up to 1400 megahertz on the core and 2150 megahertz on the memory, while the GTX 1060 had my standard Pascal overclock of an additional 200 megahertz on the core and 300 megahertz on the memory. So both of these cards were overclocked as far as I could take them, but at the end of the day, it ran much better on the GTX 1060, and that'll continue here in 1440p, where we saw the RX 480 get an average of 65 and a minimum of 48, and the GTX 1060 getting an average of 81 and a minimum of 62. So never dropping below 60 frames on the GTX 1060, but the RX 480 a lot of the time was dropping down below 60 frames, sometimes into the 50s, and as low as down into the high 40s. So once again, really just a clear-cut victory here for the GTX 1060 versus the RX 480. Moving now on to the GTX 1080 Ti, which I tested at 1440p and 4K. We can see at 1440 it got an average of 169 FPS, absolutely crushing it, and a minimum of 120, while at 4K it got an average of 86 and a minimum of 63. So high-end GPU, able to run the game at high-end resolutions like 4K, absolutely smooth as butter. Even though I'm playing on a 1440p monitor, I may end up just going back and playing the game on 4K for throughout my playthrough just to smooth out any additional, edges and with anti-aliasing, because there were some really fine edges that I thought I saw some like the staircase effect going on, but at 4K it certainly minimized it to almost non-existent. So I'm going to go back and play some more Prey right now because I've been waiting for this game for a while, and I'm just glad that Bethesda have knocked it out of the park. They've just done a bang-up job with reboots in recent years with Wolfenstein and then the Doom game. Both of those games were fucking amazing, and they have done it again here with Prey, so I am just going to really be playing the shit out of this. So if you guys want to pick it up, I will leave a link down in the description below over to CD Keys, where you could save yourself a few bucks and pick it up for $38. Or if you want, you can get it on Steam, and you will have the option to get a refund in case you don't like the game for whatever reason, or it's not running well enough on your system. Although if you're running any sort of decent modern GPU, you shouldn't have any issues running in this game at 1080p and possibly even 1440p, depending what your GPU is. But I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below as always, and don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed the performance review, and I will catch you next time. Sure.